This is Pollo, one of Fortnite's best players with 2 FNCS wins. But he wouldn't always be that good, starting out as just an average player. So to find out exactly how he became the best, we need to go all the way back to the start of Pollo's mysterious story, which would start in Chapter 1, Season 10 of Fortnite right before the World Cup kicked off, where Pollo would queue into the Contender Division Cup, his first ever Fortnite tournament on February 20th of 2019. And despite it being his very first tournament, he would actually place quite well, landing in 910th place. Now really quick, something very important to mention early on is that Pollo was almost disadvantaged in a way compared to many other pro players because of one simple thing, and that was the fact that he played on the NA West region, the little brother to NA East, just because of how much smaller it was. Now, of course, many great pro players still came out of NA West, but it would take Pollo a bit longer to get his name out there. And just because it took him so long to become a pro, doesn't mean he wasn't trying his hardest at the start, because he would play every single tournament, and heading into the World Cup, he would fail to get any earnings, with his best placement being only 549 in a week of solo qualifiers. And again, this is very unlike many of the other pro players who I've made videos on in the past, with most of them having been the best players in the game quite early on. And over the next few seasons, the fact that Pollo was just an average player would become more and more apparent, because his best placements would be just barely cracking the top 100. And that's not to mention that the majority of his placements were all the way up in the thousands, which definitely is not good. But despite this, Pollo loved Fortnite and was dedicated to improving, so it wasn't demotivating him in any way. And because of these simple facts, Pollo would continue to press forward throughout the tournaments, slowly improving in the background day by day, with the hopes that one day it would all pay off. And little did he know, his first breakthrough was right around the corner. Now you see, Pollo had just come off of 3 seasons of Fortnite with little to no visible improvement in his tournament placements. So heading into Season 3 of Chapter 2, Pollo knew that the upcoming solo FNCS would be his best chance to prove himself, so he could get better teammates in the future. And with Pollo knowing the stakes at hand, he would load into the very first qualifier of solo FNCS. But it wouldn't go according to plan for Pollo, because he would end up placing way outside of the top 1000. So he knew he needed to leave his nerves behind him, and he had to play his best. And that's exactly what he would do in the next 2 qualifiers, placing 77th and then improving even more and placing 11th, which was by far his best placement in his entire career. And if it seemed like things couldn't get much better, they would, because from this 11th place, he would actually get his first earnings ever of $300. And in this moment, Pollo most definitely felt accomplished, because he had been working towards this for over a year at this point. But he couldn't celebrate this win too much, because he knew the job wasn't finished, and that he would have to play the next week of qualifiers and perform quite well there too. So he would block out everything from his past and load into the qualifiers, making it all the way to the finals, ultimately placing 23rd, earning yet another $200. And because of his consistency in these 2 qualifiers, he qualified himself for the heats, where he would have to place within the top 25 if he wanted to make it any further into the grand finals. Now, Pollo knew he could do it because he had just placed 11th and 23rd, so with all the confidence in the world and momentum on his side, he would end up placing 5th in heats, which is absolutely crazy for a player that couldn't even make earnings in the previous season. Anyways, as grand finals was coming up, Pollo once again knew he had to try his best, and he would, but it just wouldn't be enough for him to get the placements he wanted, because after all 6 games of Grand Finals, he would end up in 53rd place, netting him $400. Which is by all means a great placement for a player like Pollo, and overall this was a great season for him, because he had just made $1,000 in one season, not to mention that this was his first season ever earning. And this great season also allowed Pollo to look for some better teammates for the trio FNCS that had been announced for the remainder of Chapter 2. So while looking for teammates, he found 2 players named Amped and Puppets, and Pollo decided to join them for FNCS. Now, Pollo's team would be able to consistently place within the top 100, but they would fail to ever place within the top 10, especially when it mattered in heats, causing them to miss out on Grand Finals. But to be fair, this was only their first season together, so they would stick together despite their performance in FNCS. And you could say it would pay off a bit, because when Frosty Frenzy came around, they would actually manage to earn $400 in one of the weeks. So they were still hopeful in what they could achieve, but this would all come crashing down in Season 5 of Chapter 2, where Pollo would fail to even make heats with them, causing them to all split apart midway through the season. And this was for sure the start of the lowest point in Pollo's career, because he had already seen what he could achieve on his own in FNCS, but now he was continuously struggling to even make heats. But he would keep his head down, continuing to grind, while also finding an outlet to show off his gameplay during this time on YouTube, where he would begin posting highlights and tournament placement videos. And through all of his placement videos and highlights, you would see one main trait that had formed in Pollo, and that was the driving reason for the success he would see way later in his career. And this trait would be his strong perseverance, because no matter what happened, he would continue to push forward. And that's exactly what he would do through the next few seasons, where he would continue to see no success in FNCS. Now, during this time, it wouldn't all be bad, because he would have a few solid tournament placements, landing in 11th and 6th in solo cash cups, earning him a combined total of $450. Now, after this rough patch for Pollo, he would be heading into the last FNCS of the chapter, which just so happened to be Grand Royale, and the prize pool was absolutely massive. So he knew he needed a good team, and he would end up teaming up with some new players named Ghouls and Levi, and together they would make it all the way to the Grand Finals, placing only 30th. Which definitely wasn't a good placement for Grand Finals, but what matters is that Pollo finally made another Grand Finals, meaning he was now a 2-time Grand Finals player. So with the accolade in his pocket, he headed into the next chapter with lots more to prove, and because the entirety of Chapter 3 would be duos, he knew he needed to find a teammate. And he would do just that, eventually stumbling across another player named Caesar, with the two actually playing quite well together in their first FNCS, making Grand Finals and even placing 18th in it. Now, this was by far Pollo's best placement to date, and it earned him over $1,000. But Pollo thought to himself that that placement wasn't good enough, and that he could do way better. So he actually decided to drop Caesar, and he began playing with a new teammate named Zio. And together, Pollo and Zio would play quite well through FNCS qualifiers in Chapter 3 Season 2, and they would jump straight into Grand Finals. But this season, Pollo's confidence got to him, and the two would falter in Grand Finals, only managing to place 35th. Definitely not good enough for Pollo. But he knew him and Zio had potential, so they decided to stick together, heading into the following season, and they would improve a ton over the course of that season, ultimately placing 15th, earning Pollo $1,500. And I think it's important to point out that just a chapter ago, Pollo hadn't ever even made a single Grand Finals. And now, just a bit later, Pollo was consistently making every single Grands, which perfectly shows how his perseverance paid off. But of course, it would pay off way more in the future as Pollo swapped his duo once again, and this time he would be playing with a player named Defiable, who was a veteran Fortnite competitive player who had some pretty good accolades himself. But despite all their prior individual successes, they actually struggled quite a bit in the qualifiers, never really managing to stay at the top of leaderboards and rather sitting around the top 100 mark. So with these less than impressive set of placements, they really dropped off of all of their competition's radars. And because of this, when grand finals rolled around, they shocked everyone, ending up placing second, netting Pollo 12 grand, which was by far his biggest win and best placement yet, and of course, this was a really high point in his career. But he wasn't sure how long this would last when one of the biggest changes in competitive Fortnite history was announced. And it would be this exact change that destroyed numerous players' careers. Now, this update would be the server merge of NA, and for Pollo, a West player, his chances didn't look too good heading over to NA Central, where he would be playing against much more practiced and prepared NA East players. But as you might have guessed by now, Pollo didn't let this stop him, and he would put in more time than ever to catch up with the East players. And all the work he put in caught the attention of Sphinx, a well-established pro player from NA East, and together they decided that they would try and tackle the first FNCS of NA Central together. And I personally remember watching this exact FNCS wondering exactly who Pollo was. But by the time the grand finals was over, I was pretty impressed because they actually managed to place third, which was Pollo's new best placement and biggest prize pool he had ever won, which was $34,000. And because Pollo and Sphinx had done so well together, they knew that they had to stick together heading into the next season to test their luck once again. And they would do that, placing 5th in that grand finals as well. Now, both of these great placements that they had together qualified the two to the Fortnite Global Championship that would be taking place in Copenhagen, Denmark. Now, this event would have all of the best players in the world in attendance, and if there was anywhere for Pollo to get his name out there as one of the best players in the game heading into Chapter 5, it would be here. So with Pollo and Sphinx knowing the stakes at hand, they would give it their all, ending up in 16th place when everything was all over, meaning they were the 16th best duo in the world, which is extremely impressive. And it was even more impressive when you realize just how good of a Chapter 4 Pollo had, placing 3rd, 5th, and then 16th in the grand finals, making Pollo one of the best players of the chapter. So now, heading into Chapter 5, Pollo and Sphinx were ready to keep playing and do even better together. But that would all change when Pollo received a DM from one of Fortnite's most notorious players, which would be peterbot, asking him to play with him in the upcoming season. And just for context, peterbot was by far the best fighter on the region at the time, and he also already had an FNCS title under his belt. So Pollo couldn't just let this opportunity pass him up, and he ended up dropping Sphinx for peterbot pretty quickly. Now, this was by far one of the riskiest decisions of Pollo's career, but as you all probably know by now, it would pay off big time. Anyways, together Pollo and peterbot would play their first tournaments together in November 2023, and these two tournaments would be the OG skirmishes, and peterbot and Pollo would actually win both of them, giving the Fortnite audience a sneak peek at what would happen in Chapter 5. And from here, Chapter 5 would kick off with lots of tournaments, and Pollo and peterbot would jump right in, managing to win 1 week of the Dual Cash Cups, which was just them getting warmed up for the grand finals, where they would end up placing second, earning $45,000 each. Now, this was Pollo's new best placement, and you might be noticing yet another trend in Pollo's consistency and perseverance, because as he continued to play, he would just slowly get better and better, and it would be right after the second place that he realized truly how far he had come, and that he really could win everything this next season. So him and peterbot started grinding even more, quickly becoming by far the best fighters on the region and possibly within the entire world, dropping plenty of 30 bombs and even a couple 40 bombs in the solo cash cups. And this sheer ability of fighting that they developed would help play a crucial role in Season 2 of Chapter 5, because there would be a certain POI called Grim Gate, and it would have a medallion that basically allowed for infinite dashes. Now, at first, not many people realized just how good this was, and it kind of flew over everyone's radar, except for Peter and Pollo, because they would instantly claim Grim Gates for themselves. But as people realized how good it was, people would start to contest them. But because Peter and Pollo were the best fighters Fortnite had ever seen, they easily retained their spot, and it would be this subtle war that was going on at Grim Gates that would decide the entire season, because once Pollo had this spot to himself, him and Peter would go on to win every single dual cash cup that season, making them the 100% favorite to win Grand Finals. And heading into Grand Finals, Pollo knew if he ever would win a championship, this would be his chance. So him and Peter went out there and they played their absolute best.
We need to like fight, bro.
What's going on? 60 way, 60 way, that's it.
Dropping?
Nice.
Dead!
Oh my god.
Drop. Oh fucking god. You're him! Dropping. Go. Wait.
Good. Nice. Oh my god.
Might be dead. I'm dead. Right here.
Don't keep him the splashes. Don't keep him the splashes.
Dead! Oh my!
So with a great performance from the best players in the game, coming out of the best drop spot in Fortnite history, Pollo and Peter had just won FNCS Grand Finals. But they didn't just barely win, they had actually won by 339 points. And just to provide some perspective for how crazy that was, if you had won a game in Grand Finals with 10 eliminations, you would get 160 points. So you would have needed 2 more games like that to even come close to catching Pollo and Peter. And in the moment that Pollo won, it was truly a culmination of years of work and perseverance, a trait that can benefit any hardworking individual. But Pollo knew that just because he had won once, his journey wasn't over, and that he couldn't just let off the brakes once he had made it to the top. So heading into the next season, which would be Season 3, Peter and Pollo decided to start landing at the rig, once again the best location on the map, and they got it all to themselves because of just how intimidating they were. And from here they would go through the season like usual, dominating tournaments and even winning another dual cash cup. Then heading into Grand Finals, they again had fallen off everyone's radar just a bit because of the fact that they hadn't won every single tournament like last season. So heading into Grand Finals, they knew they had to remind everyone exactly who they were.
Like, dead, drop the light.
Yeah. 130.
Nice.
100.
Crack them.
Nice. They might have dashes, it's rapid.
Take this. Nothing.
Nah, no builds, no
Look.
builds.
100! 126!
Nice.
Can we drop?
30.
Nice.
150.
I'm on low. Frank? Dead!
Nice.
He's low. He has no builds. He's in storm.
Dead! Let's go!
Nice.
Good.
Now, I think it should be obvious at this point that Pollo had just won his second FNCS, and honestly, not a whole lot needs to be said about that, besides the fact that him and peterbot so far are indisputably the best team in the world during Chapter 5 Fortnite. But there still is one more big tournament that they're going to have to show up big time in to secure that legacy, and that's the Global Championship that's going to be happening in Dallas, Texas in a couple of weeks. Now, if they manage to win this tournament, they will for sure be locked in, cemented in the Hall of Fame of Fortnite if they aren't already. But whether they win or not, Pollo's discipline and perseverance should be an example for anyone who's really truly trying to achieve any goal. And another player just like Pollo is Reed, and you can watch me interview him about his journey right here.